You're watching another Nerd Stalker interview. Welcome to another Nerd Stalker interview. Good morning. This is Greg Gloria, aka Social Greg, on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network. Today, I'm pleased to talk with YouNoodle co-founder and CEO Torsten Kolind. A little bit about Torsten. Torsten is Danish, and he has a biotechnology background, which I learned while researching his background. And he helped start YouNoodle with Rebecca Huang over 3 years ago. So good morning, Torsten. How you doing? Thanks for joining us on Nerd Stalker, and a nice day here in San Francisco this morning.
Morning, Greg, and yeah, thanks for having me.
I appreciate that. And do you want to add anything more about yourself that you want to tell the Nerd Stalker audience?
No, I mean, besides the biotech background you mentioned, I have coded all my life. I love hacking together little apps. So it's certainly it's something that I think anyone should do. If you have that passion, be sure just to not be caught up in some job. Make sure you go and build things and hack things. So I'd like to add that to the biotech as well.
No, I think I apologize. I didn't capture that. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, but I think that's very true. You definitely had, when we were talking earlier, about a passion about coding, and that's why you've done this for so many years. So anyway, as a backdrop to the conclusion of global entrepreneurship last week, you guys started YouNoodle 3 years ago, and can you tell us what maybe the startup landscape looked like then, and why you guys started YouNoodle?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot happens in 3 years in the startup landscape, which is partly why it's exciting. So at the time, Rebecca and myself were running competitions for entrepreneurs. I was in Denmark at the time, and Rebecca was at Stanford. And the what we found was that it's pretty easy to run a little event and find some winners and give them a prize. But the fun part of competitions is that it's everyone is evaluated on the same terms. So we wanted to see, could we broaden this? Could we try and put them all together in the same network? And could we make them talk to one another and learn more than just what they did out of being in their own local competition? So that was kind of the background of why and how we started the company.
Wow, that's pretty interesting because I was here in San Francisco, I think 3 years ago when you guys started it, and it's definitely a different landscape today. I mean, similar but different, so bigger and a lot more different opportunities, I think. So anyway, we concluded Global Entrepreneurship last week, right? And you guys with Startup Weekend and Global Entrepreneurship Ship Week released an infographic showing kind of the rise of the startup ecosystem from like 2011 to today. And it's not just a Silicon Valley SF tech thing anymore, it seems. So can you explain to the audience what you feel the infographic is telling us?
Yeah, it's as I mentioned, things move a lot in 3 years, and what we've seen just in the past year is that there are just so many events for entrepreneurs and so many activities you can do as an entrepreneur. We've had it here in Silicon Valley for a while. It's nothing that new, but there are a lot of other parts of the world where it's culturally very I wouldn't say frowned upon, but at least it's not your typical career path to go and start a company. You got to go and tell mom and dad and the rest of your family and friends that no, I don't want a normal job, or I want to go start a company. It's very risky. So what we're seeing is that there's more and more focus on that type of career path, and there's more support available for entrepreneurs who want to do this. And with Startup Weekend, which is another amazing project and very global project, we've been seeing pretty much doubling just over 12 months in the amount of activities and the amount of events that we've picked up in our networks. So that's what Global Entrepreneurship Week is also all about. It's about showing everyone that everyone else outside of your own country are also trying to start companies and trying to build something and make a difference. So there's a lot of kind of sharing and the cultural component to the projects that we're doing.
Well, so I was thinking about this when you were talking about just the growth, and we see it in the app stores, and obviously apps are focused on. So, well, what is the composition of these startups that you see today? Is it just mobile app, web app people, or is it getting more diverse beyond that?
I think one thing that's changing is that you can't really talk about mobile apps and web apps as an industry anymore. It seems like every industry now has some sort of mobile app and web app component. So we're definitely seeing a broadening and a kind of a more diverse landscape out there. And if you ask me, some of the most exciting examples of new startups and companies are where those technologies and product types like mobile apps and web apps are meeting more traditional industries where they haven't really been used to using technology, and where all of a sudden you're opening up literally the world outside them to trade with or to share experiences from or get recognition from. There's so many interesting models out there. So we're definitely seeing a diversification of tech, from its traditional industry, quote unquote, out to everything else.
No, I agree with you. I think the biggest thing I've seen out here, where you see these kind of two worlds, you say, collide. I think Maker Faire is a really great example of that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's also growing very fast. I don't have their data, but they'll probably tell you something similar.
Yeah, I would think so. Just seeing the growth of that San Mateo attendance every year, it's kind of crazy out here.
Yep.
At least on the West Coast here, I hear similar things about the New York side, and a lot of the other ones as well. But I mean, like let's talk about YouNoodle actually a little bit. I think you set the landscape of what are you guys currently doing right now, and how are you helping these startups, succeed as they grow in numbers?
So for us, what we're doing is we're trying to move from having connected a lot of the entrepreneurs to competitions and help them through competitions. We're not trying to learn from the data that the competitions tell us. Because what's really cool about a competition is that everyone is evaluated on the same terms. It's very different from how a lot of other startup connections and how the ecosystem works. It's kind of like who you know and who will intro you, and we're like all of these kind of slightly unfair relations that help you get ahead, right? And it's just that's not available to a lot of the rest of the world. Where if you're not in a tech hotspot, you don't have those opportunities available. So we're trying to see, can we use the data and all the local kind of experts, judges that are evaluating these startups and competitions, can we use that data in order to open up opportunities and make connections where none existed before?
Wow. So, yeah, because I agree with you. I think maybe 20 years ago, maybe 15, when I started in the Silicon Valley as a hardware engineer, it seemed to be this kind of glass ceiling, I would say, for new companies appearing on the landscape, because I think then I think there was a little bit more hardware, and maybe the entry number to get in was a little bit higher, but at the same time you needed to be backed by some pretty strong people to really get any notice, right?
Absolutely. And to be fair, if you want to raise big money or really make it, that still is, if not a requirement, then definitely helping you a lot. But even before you get there, just in order to get ahead and understand the world around you, understand how you can scale, how you can grow using people from other countries, connections from other countries, clients abroad. It could be co-founders. It really could be anything that people just aren't really accessing today, because there's just so many startups and so many opportunities that it seems to be sometimes more of a popularity contest than actually about who has something of value and who can give something of value.
Right, right. Now I'm going a little bit away from kind of our script here, but you got me thinking about a lot of other things. Was like, what do you see if you go by regions of the globe? Is there a pretty even growth curve in different regions of the globe, or is there an area that you say, wow, I wouldn't have guessed that?
So it's something that we need to look more into, and I have to study it a little more. But in general, I think it's fair to say that my home continent of Europe is not nearly growing as fast as especially Latin America and Southeast Asia. That's where we're picking up a lot of activity. Latin America is interesting. It's been led a lot by projects like Startup Chile. The Chilean government's tried to get foreign entrepreneurs to come to Chile over the past 3 years, and there's lots of spin-outs kind of related to that or from that. And so there are lots of projects locally by either government-run or run by foundations, run by entrepreneurs, angels, and it's really growing fast in some of those regions when you get out of the traditional economic powerhouses.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. What you said earlier is kind of leveling the playing field, right, for a lot of these other countries who just haven't played very well in tech in over the last 30, 40 years, right?
Totally, and I think it's actually a very kind of interesting democratic opportunity that all of a sudden, because of how much cheaper and easier it's becoming to launch a new startup, you don't have that huge hardware investment that you had earlier. You can just scale on Amazon or wherever else you do it. It's just becoming easier and cheaper to get out there with your product, and that is of a huge advantage to lots of countries that don't have the Silicon Valley ecosystem of lots of money
Mm,
going around.
mm.
So we are seeing a very interesting shift in the very early stage startup activity that just is going global much more so than before.
Right, right.
Super
So
exciting.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're in the middle of it here in San Francisco, obviously. I mean, there seems to be a cachet with San Francisco, in Silicon Valley. Probably more San Francisco these days, actually, from what I feel. But I feel a lot of people want to come here. But I think what you said earlier about kind of democratizing this ecosystem a little bit more across the globe, people don't have to feel they have to come to San Francisco anymore, right?
That's totally true. Now they still want to, just to be clear. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's kind of like Hollywood for tech entrepreneurs. But
yeah.
you're right in they don't have to as much as they did before. You are actually able to grow and scale a company outside because of all of those tools that you have available today.
Mm,
And there are great examples of that. Europe recently, you have products like SoundCloud or
mm.
Spotify. And actually, Skype grew a lot before it ever hit San Francisco. So there are plenty of examples, and I think we'll see many more examples of companies that are based somewhere else, but are adopting some of the methods and technologies that Silicon Valley startups are using.
So now let's talk again a little bit about YouNoodle. How you connect entrepreneurs with events that they could get well connected and kind of develop relationships, right? Is that the typical model, or you guys are expanding that a little bit more these days?
I think we're one of the ways we're different because it just seems like there are more and more entrepreneurs and more events, and just activity levels in general are going up, and that's of course a great thing on its own. But where we are slightly different is that we have a little bit more of a meritocratic approach. So
Mm,
we're saying it's not just about showing every event to every startup out there. We're trying to figure out who are actually the startups that would benefit from certain opportunities or certain events
mm,
or certain programs and vice versa, right? Instead of just trying to advertise a given event or opportunity to everyone, we're trying to say, well, you should talk to this guy, this guy, this guy. And I think that's something that is just notoriously difficult because for that you need data. You need to understand how can you compare one startup in one country to another startup in another country. And the earlier stage it is, the harder that is to do. So it's something that really keeps me awake at night is to figure out how can we crack that. And I think we're onto something really solid with the competition data. But it's at least a super interesting field to be in.
no, and I think traditional ways you'd have to do it through some kind of social media box or network, right?
Right? That's what everyone else is doing.
Right?
So it's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Well, anyway, I want to thank you for your time. You guys are still busy here in Thanksgiving week, I heard, so
Yep.
you got a
Yep.
lot to do until Thursday. But anyway, can you tell the listeners how to get a hold of you and learn more about YouNoodle and the great things that you guys are doing here in San Francisco?
Yeah, absolutely. So go to younoodle.com, follow us on @YouNoodle on Twitter. We have events all the time. There are plenty of ways to get a hold of us. Facebook.com/YouNoodle. So you'll find us. You'll find us in your social network of choice.
Absolutely. So anyway, that was Torsten Kolind, the CEO of YouNoodle, helping entrepreneurs globally. So thanks for joining us, everyone. This is Greg Blurry, aka Social Greg, on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network, where we believe in tech, startups, design, and you. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and be careful out there. Okay, I will close this off and